The US men's national team is still very trash. Every time I see them play, I think of this meme right here.
There is no passion, there is no vision, there is no aggression, there is no mindset in this football club. Nothing is there. What the?
Now that right there is a 5-star meme, unlike the US men's national team. And to me, the US men's national team has one big issue. One issue that makes them suffer more than any other issue they could possibly have. And they have multiple, but this is the main thing. And it's going to be a little controversial when I say it. They are not broke enough. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's break it down. Most of the time, it's up to the biggest leagues within each respective country to fork up the bill when it comes to developing players in those countries. Now, if you look at some of the biggest producers of soccer players, and by the way, because we're talking about the US specifically, I'm gonna call it soccer. When we talk about European football, I'll call it football. You know, don't kill me in the comments because I'm calling it soccer. The first issue is that we're not spending enough money. Now, let me explain that part. When you look at the top producers of soccer players in the world, you got France, UK, Spain, and Germany. Each of those countries individually spend up to $1 to $2 billion a year on their country alone just to develop players within that country. It casts a sort of elite net that is able to capture every single prospect that has any potential from their respective country. Here's the thing though. You take those countries I mentioned, UK, France, Spain, and Germany, put them together, they would make up only 20% of the US's landmass. Now, how much does the MLS, which is the biggest league in US soccer, which means they're the ones responsible for forking up the money to develop players in the US, how much money are they putting up, right? Because if each of these countries that I mentioned is spending $1 to $2 billion, the US should be spending at the very minimum $10 billion to be able to properly scout and develop talent. The MLS is spending over $100 million to scout and develop all the talent in the US. That is simply not enough. When countries that are 1/10 the size of the US are spending 10 times more to develop and scout players. When I describe these countries as having an elite net to scout any potential players instantaneously and develop them, the US has a raggedy net with holes in it and failed to capture or scout talent appropriately. So what ends up happening is, let's play this from the perspective of a normal person born in the US, parents make whatever the average salary is, and you are extremely gifted at soccer. There is a good chance if you don't live in specific areas within the US, even if you are a standout, amazing prospect, you probably will not get scouted properly. Therefore, guess what? Your second option after that would be to join these youth teams that are specifically made for pay to play. Your parents most likely have to move to a different area and pay for you to then play on these youth teams to potentially get noticed and then develop and then turn into a potential professional soccer player. But the problem is most parents lack that wealth. And that's the issue. When you focus on the 1% and when you only develop the 1%, the 99%, which is the majority of the country, has no access to this. So you have a team that's built essentially mostly off rich kids. This statement right here, it's kind of controversial, but it's the truth. Poor players are better than rich players. And me, myself, I wasn't born in a wealthy family. My parents were not in the 1%. I was born in not the greatest of neighborhoods.
You know what it is? Your auntie broke, your grandma broke, your brother broke, you broke!
What's something people say when someone is like very ambitious? Oh, he's hungry. See, if you got food in your belly, you're not gonna be hungry. You're not ambitious. You know what I'm saying? If your dad owns all this stuff, if your parents own all this stuff, you're born into a position where you don't have to do much. Soccer doesn't have to pan out for you and you'll still be fine. But guess what? Pressure makes diamonds. And if you have the safety net of resources that, hey, whenever I fail at this, I can just go into that and I'll be just fine. When is a dog its most dangerous? When it is cornered. And poor people in this country and every country are cornered by death and hunger. There's a reason why the best art in the world is created out of pain. When somebody is from that situation and is able to get out, they keep going, and they don't want to ever be back because they know what's at stake if they do not succeed. That pain is etched into their skin. It's etched into everything they do. When I watch somebody like Rafinha dribble a soccer ball, when I used to watch Wayne Rooney go out there, work his way up the field and be able to score, when I see a Cristiano Ronaldo in his prime imposing his physical will on top of dudes, hey yo, I see the pain in their eyes. I see that motivation, that fire of I ain't going back. I'm gonna establish a legacy. I'm gonna be the first person in my family to establish a legacy. When you are built like that, when you have death and hunger staring at you, you will spend 10,000 hours in your backyard practicing. You will play until your feet bleed, until you collapse from dehydration. That is something a rich man can never relate to. And that's why at the end of the day, people that come from poor backgrounds, in my opinion, have a better chance of succeeding than rich people do. And this applies across every league, every sport, everywhere. And that doesn't mean that rich people will never succeed at sports. That's not true at all. I'm saying on average. You have players that came from wealthy backgrounds and were still able to make a name for themselves. I mean, F1 is a sport that literally almost everybody came from a rich background, right? So it does exist. And when I watch the US men's national team play, I see a team that's spoiled. They're not hungry.
I regret to inform you that you do not have that dog in you.
That's why we get beat by a team like Panama. They're hungry. Therefore, they're more of a dangerous team. That's why we end up getting beat by a lot of these teams. And until we start getting dudes that are hungry, that are dogs out there on the field, guess what? We will never be a threat. I lived on the east coast of Florida. Like I said, it wasn't the greatest neighborhood. And guess what? There weren't any soccer fields to play in. When I moved to the west coast of Florida and I traveled to places that are predominantly rich, very rich areas, they have soccer fields. They have pristine soccer fields. And you see these kids practicing on the soccer field with their millionaire parents sitting by and encouraging them on. You don't have that in places that are underprivileged. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things we need to do. There's a lot of issues outside of what I mentioned that are holding the US men's national team back. But to me, this is the number one, because at the end of the day, we want to feel at one with our national team. And the truth is, the US men's national players, a lot of them come from a background that we are not familiar with. Therefore, we can't relate to them. If you want the US men's national team to be taken seriously, if you want them competing in the World Cup, if you want them being great and make soccer in the US great, build soccer fields in the hoods. Hope you enjoyed this video. You can leave a like. You can subscribe for more content like this. I'll be making more videos about US men's soccer, about the MLS, about the USL, about European football as well. Peace.